The fluorescent lights in the emergency room buzzed with a persistent hum that matched the throbbing in my temples. Each breath I took sent a sharp pain through my rib cage, a reminder of the places where his fists had connected with bone. I pressed the ice pack against my swollen cheek, wincing at the contact, and watched the familiar chaos of the ER unfold around me. 3 months. That's how long I'd been working as a nurse here at St. Michael's Hospital, trying to rebuild a life I'd thought was destroyed. The night shifts were brutal, the pay barely enough to cover rent on my tiny studio apartment, but it was honest work. Clean work, far removed from the darkness of my past. I should have been on the other side of the triage desk, wearing scrubs and helping patients. Instead, I sat in a plastic chair with a paper gown covering my torn shirt, waiting for my turn to be examined. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years running from violence, only to have it follow me here, into the one place I'd thought I was safe. My stepfather had found me. I'd known it was only a matter of time, but part of me had hoped he'd forget about me, move on to his next victim. That hope died tonight when I came home to find him waiting outside my apartment building, drunk and angry, demanding money I didn't have. The fight had been brief but brutal. He'd always been stronger than me, meaner. When I refused to let him into my apartment, he'd grabbed me by the hair and slammed my head against the brick wall. I'd kneed him in the groin, just hard enough to break free, and ran. The hospital was only 4 blocks away, and I'd made it to the entrance before collapsing against the automatic doors, gasping for breath. Now, sitting here in the harsh fluorescent light, I felt the familiar weight of shame settling over me like a blanket. The other nurses pretended not to recognize me, but I saw the whispers, the sympathetic glances. Diana Martinez, the new girl with the rough background. Diana Martinez, who couldn't even protect herself. Diana Martinez? A nurse I didn't recognize called my name, clipboard in hand. I stood, clutching the ice pack, and followed her through the maze of curtained examination areas. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperation, a combination I'd grown accustomed to during my training, but never quite learned to tolerate. She left me in exam room 7 with instructions that a doctor would be with me shortly. I sat on the paper-covered table, the crinkling sound loud in the small space. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. Probably my stepfather, calling to apologize or threaten or some toxic combination of both. I'd learned years ago that nothing good came from answering his calls. The door opened, and I looked up, expecting a doctor. Instead, I saw him. Dominic Cross. The name echoed in my memory, attached to a face I'd never forgotten despite years of trying. He stood in the doorway, filling the space with his presence in a way that had nothing to do with his physical size. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and eyes that seemed to see everything, understand everything. He wore an expensive suit, impeccably tailored, the kind that cost more than I made in 3 months. Blood stained the white shirt beneath his jacket, and his knuckles were scraped raw. But it was his face that held my attention, the sharp angles and hard lines that spoke of violence controlled but never quite tamed. For a moment, we simply stared at each other. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his features, making him look simultaneously younger and older than I remembered. Recognition flickered in his dark eyes, followed by something I couldn't quite identify. Surprise, maybe, or disbelief. Diana. My name on his lips was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of years, of memories I'd tried to bury. You're Maria's daughter. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed, my heart hammering against my bruised ribs in a way that had nothing to do with the pain. Dominic Cross. The man my mother had saved 12 years ago when I was 14. Taking a bullet meant for him during a gang dispute outside our apartment building. The man who'd held her hand while she died, whispering promises about taking care of her daughter. Promises I'd never wanted him to keep. Mr. Cross. I managed to force the words out, making them as formal as possible. "I think you have the wrong room. I'm waiting for the doctor." He stepped inside, and I noticed the limp, the way he favored his right side. He'd been injured. The blood on his shirt wasn't just decoration. For a brief, insane moment, I wondered if I should offer to help him. But then I remembered who he was, what he was, and kept my mouth shut. "I own this hospital," he said, his voice low and smooth, like expensive whiskey. "I know exactly which room you're in." He moved closer, and I instinctively pressed back against the wall. Not from fear, exactly, but from something more complicated. Something that made my skin feel too tight and my breath come too fast. "Your injuries," he said, his eyes tracking over my face with clinical precision. "Who did this to you?" "It doesn't matter." I lifted my chin, trying to maintain some shred of dignity despite the paper gown and bruised face. "I'll be fine. You should go take care of whatever brought you here tonight." A muscle twitched in his jaw, the only sign of emotion in his otherwise controlled expression. "Your stepfather." It wasn't a question. Somehow he knew. Of course he knew. Dominic Cross didn't become the most powerful crime boss in the city by being ignorant of what happened on his streets. "I handled it," I said, though we both knew that was a lie. "My stepfather would be back. He always came back." "I don't need your help, Mr. Cross. I don't need anything from you." "Your mother saved my life," he said, stepping closer until he was barely 3 feet away. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made my head swim. "I made her a promise." "I was there," I reminded him, my voice sharper than I intended. "I heard what you promised. And I also heard you tell her that you'd stay away from me, that you'd let me have a normal life." His expression darkened, shadows gathering in his eyes like storm clouds. "That was before someone put their hands on you. Before you showed up at my hospital looking like you went 10 rounds with a professional boxer." "It's not your hospital," I said automatically, even though we both knew that was a lie too. Dominic Cross owned half the city, directly or indirectly. St. Michael's was just one more property in his vast empire. "And I don't need your protection. I've been taking care of myself for 12 years. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. His fingers, surprisingly gentle despite their obvious strength, tilted my chin up so I was forced to meet his eyes. The touch sent electricity through my skin, making every nerve ending come alive in a way that both terrified and thrilled me. "You look just like her," he murmured, his thumb brushing carefully over my uninjured cheek. "Same eyes, same stubborn chin. Maria would have been proud of you. Becoming a nurse, trying to help people." "Don't," I whispered, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. "Don't talk about her like you knew her. You barely spoke to her before that night." "I knew her well enough to recognize strength when I saw it," he said. "And I see that same strength in you, Diana. But strength doesn't mean you have to face everything alone." The door burst open, and Dr. Harrison rushed in, looking flustered and apologetic. "Mr. Cross, I'm so sorry for the delay. I didn't realize you were... I was told you were." He stopped, seeming to notice me for the first time. "Miss Martinez, I'll take care of Mr. Cross first, of course, and then..." "You'll take care of Miss Martinez first," Dominic said, his voice carrying an edge of authority that made the doctor pale. "I can wait." "But sir, your wound..." "Can wait," Dominic repeated, releasing my chin but not stepping back. "Miss Martinez needs attention. Now." Dr. Harrison looked between us, clearly confused but not brave enough to argue. "Of course, Mr. Cross. Whatever you say." He approached me with cautious movements, like I might bolt at any moment. Maybe I would have if Dominic hadn't been blocking the only exit. As the doctor began examining my injuries, asking questions about pain levels and dizziness. I kept my eyes fixed on the far wall, refusing to look at Dominic. But I felt his presence like a physical weight, felt his gaze on me like a touch. When the doctor pressed too hard on my ribs and I gasped, I heard Dominic's sharp intake of breath, sensed him moving forward before he checked himself. "Nothing's broken," Dr. Harrison announced after what felt like an eternity. "Severe bruising, possible minor concussion. I'll prescribe pain medication and recommend you take a few days off work." "I can't take time off," I said immediately. "I need the hours." "You need to heal," Dominic interjected. "I'll speak to your supervisor. The time off will be paid." I finally looked at him, anger flaring hot in my chest. "I don't want your charity, Mr. Cross. I don't want anything from you." His eyes held mine, and I saw something shift in their depths. Not anger at my rejection, but something darker, more possessive. Something that made my stomach flip and my heart race. "This isn't charity," he said quietly, so softly that Dr. Harrison couldn't hear. "This is me keeping a promise to a woman who died in my arms. This is me making sure her daughter doesn't end up the same way." Before I could respond, before I could tell him exactly what he could do with his promises and his protection, my phone rang. The shrill sound cut through the tension in the room. I pulled it from my pocket, saw my stepfather's name on the screen, and felt my blood turn to ice. Dominic's hand shot out, plucking the phone from my trembling fingers before I could stop him. He answered, his voice deadly calm. "This number is no longer available. If you attempt to contact Diana Martinez again, if you come within 50 feet of her, I will personally ensure you regret it. Do we understand each other?" I couldn't hear my stepfather's response, but I saw Dominic's expression harden into something absolutely terrifying. "Good," he said, and ended the call. He handed the phone back to me, his fingers brushing mine in a way that felt far too deliberate. "He won't bother you again," Dominic said. "You're under my protection now, whether you want it or not." I opened my mouth to argue, to tell him I didn't need his protection, that I'd been handling my stepfather for years. But the words died in my throat when I saw the look in his eyes. Not just determination, but something darker, something possessive. Something that told me my life, the careful, quiet life I'd built, was about to change completely. And there wasn't a damn thing I could do to stop it. The black Mercedes idling outside my apartment building the next morning should have been my first clue that Dominic Cross didn't make empty promises. I'd spent a sleepless night replaying our encounter in the ER, trying to convince myself that his declaration of protection was just talk, the kind of dramatic gesture powerful men made when they felt guilty. I was wrong. The driver, a man built like a brick wall with cold eyes and a bulge under his jacket that could only be a gun, stepped out as I emerged from my building. He didn't introduce himself, didn't smile or offer pleasantries. He simply opened the rear door and stood waiting, as if my compliance was never in question. "I can take the bus," I said, hitching my bag higher on my shoulder. The bruises from last night had darkened overnight, turning my cheek a mottled purple and yellow that no amount of makeup could hide. Every breath still hurt, but I'd taken enough ibuprofen to dull the edge. "Mr. Cross insists," the driver said. His voice was surprisingly soft for such a large man, but the finality in those 3 words left no room for argument. I glanced around the street, noting the curious stares from my neighbors. Mrs. Chen from 3B was practically hanging out her window, eyes wide with speculation. By noon, the entire building would know that Diana Martinez had a mysterious benefactor, with expensive cars and armed drivers. Perfect. Just what I needed. I slid into the back seat, the leather cool against my jeans. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something dark and masculine that reminded me too much of Dominic. As we pulled away from the curb, I noticed another black sedan fall into position behind us. 2 cars. He'd assigned me 2 cars worth of protection. The hospital was only a 15-minute drive, but it felt like hours. I kept my eyes fixed on the window, watching the city wake up around us. Street vendors setting up their carts, business people rushing toward the subway, the everyday chaos of life continuing as if my world hadn't tilted completely off its axis. When we arrived at St. Michael's, the driver walked me all the way to the staff entrance. I expected him to leave then, but he positioned himself just outside the door, arms crossed, clearly settling in for a long wait. I wanted to tell him this was ridiculous, that I didn't need a bodyguard at my workplace, but the words stuck in my throat. Because despite my protests, despite my anger at Dominic's high-handed interference, a small part of me felt safer knowing someone was watching. I hated that part of myself. The nursing station was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Linda, the charge nurse, looked up from her charts and did a double take when she saw my face. "Diana, honey, what happened?" I fell. I lied automatically. The excuse so practiced it rolled off my tongue without thought. "Stupid accident. I'm fine." Her eyes, sharp from decades of seeing through patient lies, told me she didn't believe me for a second, but she was professional enough not to push. "Dr. Harrison left a note that you're on light duty for the next 3 days. No heavy lifting, nothing too strenuous." My jaw clenched. Of course he had. Dominic's influence extending even here, rearranging my work schedule without my permission. I swallowed my anger and nodded. "Thank you." The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks, taking vitals, updating charts, helping patients with medication. Normal, blessedly normal work that let me forget, for brief moments, about the mess my life had become. But every time I passed a window, I saw the black Mercedes in the parking lot. Every time I went to the break room, I felt eyes on me, whispers following in my wake. The other nurses had noticed. Of course they had. You couldn't show up with a face like mine and armed guards without attracting attention. But no one asked directly, and I was grateful for their discretion. I'd worked hard to build a reputation here as a competent, reliable nurse. I didn't want that overshadowed by drama. During my lunch break, I retreated to the hospital chapel, a small quiet space on the second floor that most staff forgot existed. I sank into one of the pews, closed my eyes, and tried to find some semblance of peace. The silence was broken by the soft sound of the door opening behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. I'd felt his presence the moment he entered the building, like a shift in air pressure before a storm. "You're supposed to be resting," Dominic said, his footsteps echoing on the tile floor as he approached. I opened my eyes but didn't turn. "I'm on light duty. That's resting enough." He sat down in the pew beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He'd changed since last night, trading the blood-stained suit for a charcoal gray one that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The scrapes on his knuckles were covered with bandages, but I could see the shadow of bruising beneath. "How's your wound?" I asked, still not looking at him. "Stitched and healing," he said dismissively, as if being stabbed was a minor inconvenience. "How are your ribs?" "Bruised, like the doctor said." I finally turned to face him, and the intensity in his dark eyes made my breath catch. "Why are you here, Mr. Cross?" "Dominic," he corrected. "And I'm here because I want to see how you're doing. Make sure you're safe." "I'm at a hospital surrounded by security cameras and witnesses," I pointed out. "I'm perfectly safe." His jaw tightened. "Your stepfather called the hospital this morning, tried to find out which shift you were working." My blood ran cold. "How do you know that?" "Because I have people monitoring all calls that come through the main line," he said, as if having an entire hospital's phone system under surveillance was perfectly normal. He didn't get any information. The receptionist told him we don't give out employee schedules. But he's persistent, Diana. He's not going to stop. I looked away, focusing on the simple wooden cross mounted on the chapel wall. He's always been persistent. I've dealt with him before. Not while you were under my protection, Dominic said. Things are different now. I didn't ask for your protection. No, he agreed. You didn't. But you have it anyway. The possessiveness in his voice sent a shiver down my spine, equal parts fear and something I didn't want to name. I don't want to be anyone's responsibility, I said quietly. I've been taking care of myself since my mother died. I'm good at it. I'm sure you are, he said. But being good at survival and actually living are two different things. When was the last time you did something just for yourself? Something that made you happy? The question caught me off guard. I couldn't remember. Work, bills, trying to stay one step ahead of disaster. That was my life. Happiness was a luxury I couldn't afford. That's not relevant. It's entirely relevant, he countered. You're 26 years old, Diana. You should be enjoying your life, not just enduring it. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Easy to say when you have money and power. Some of us don't have that luxury. Then let me give it to you. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I turned to stare at him, searching his face for any sign of mockery. There was none. He was completely serious. In exchange for what? I asked, my voice harder than I intended. Nothing in life is free, Mr. Cross. Especially not from men like you. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. I'm not asking for anything. Your mother saved my life. This is me honoring that debt. My mother has been dead for 12 years, I said. Whatever debt you owed her died with her. Did it? He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Because I promised her I'd look after you. I promised I'd make sure you had everything you needed. And then I stayed away because that's what she asked. Let her daughter live a normal life, she said. Let her be free. His hands clenched into fists. But look where that got you. Working yourself to exhaustion, living in an apartment that barely has heat, getting beaten by a man who should have been dealt with years ago. That's not your fault, I said, though part of me wondered if it was. If Dominic had intervened earlier, would things be different? Isn't it? He turned to me, and the raw emotion in his face stole my breath. I could have helped you, should have helped you, but I kept my distance because I thought that's what was best. I was wrong. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, saw a text from an unknown number, and felt my heart stop. The message contained a single photo. My apartment building. The picture had been taken this morning. I could tell by the timestamp. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible, was a figure I recognized. My stepfather. Dominic must have seen my expression because he took the phone from my nerveless fingers. His face darkened as he studied the image. When did you receive this? Just now. My voice sounded distant, disconnected. He's watching me. Not anymore. Dominic stood, pulling out his own phone. He spoke rapidly in Italian, his voice cold and clipped. I caught enough words to understand he was giving orders, mobilizing people. When he finished the call, he looked down at me. Pack a bag. You're not going back to that apartment. I can't just leave, I protested, even as fear made my hands shake. My job, my things. Your job will be here when you're ready to come back. Your things will be collected and brought to you. But you're not staying in that building another night. The authority in his voice brooked no argument. Where am I supposed to go? My house, he said simply. You'll be safe there. No, I stood, backing away from him. Absolutely not. I'm not moving into your house like some kind of protected guest, he supplied. That's all you'd be, Diana. I have plenty of space. You'd have your own wing, your own staff. You wouldn't even have to see me if you didn't want to. The offer was tempting, dangerously so. But I knew better than to accept charity that came with invisible strings. What do you really want from me, Dominic? I asked, using his first name for the first time. Because nobody does this much for a stranger without wanting something in return. He stepped closer, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I want to keep you safe. I want to honor the promise I made to your mother. And I want. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I want to give you the life you deserve, the life she wanted for you. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision, he said. But the protection stays. The guards, the car, the monitoring. I won't let anything happen to you, Diana, even if you hate me for it. I should have felt angry at his high-handedness. Should have told him to take his protection and his money and his promises and leave me alone. But standing there in the chapel, looking into eyes that held 12 years of guilt and something darker, something possessive that made my skin burn, I couldn't find the words. Because the truth was, I was tired. Tired of running. Tired of struggling. Tired of always being afraid. And here was a man offering me safety, security, everything I'd been fighting for since my mother died. All I had to do was accept. All I had to do was step into a cage that looked like paradise. 1 week, I heard myself say. I'll stay for 1 week while you deal with my stepfather. Then I'm going back to my life. Something that looked like triumph flashed across his face before he carefully schooled his expression. 1 week, he agreed. We'll start there. As he escorted me out of the chapel, his hand hovering protectively at my lower back without quite touching, I wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. Or if maybe, just maybe, I'd finally found a way to stop running. The guards fell into position around us as we exited the hospital, a human shield that spoke of power and danger. And when Dominic helped me into the back of his Mercedes, his fingers lingering on mine for just a moment too long, I felt the first threads of the web beginning to tighten around me. Dominic's house turned out to be a sprawling estate in the countryside, about 40 minutes outside the city. The Mercedes wound through iron gates that opened automatically, past manicured gardens and a fountain that probably cost more than every apartment I'd ever lived in combined. The mansion itself was a study in understated elegance, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the late afternoon light. This is not a house, I said, as the car pulled up to the front entrance. This is a compound. It's secure, Dominic replied, as if that explained everything. Maybe, in his world, it did. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair met us at the door. Miss Martinez, welcome. I'm Elena, the house manager. Let me show you to your rooms. Your rooms. Plural, of course. I followed Elena through hallways lined with artwork that probably belonged in museums. She kept up a steady stream of information as we walked, pointing out various rooms and facilities. There was a gym, a library, an indoor pool, even a movie theater. It was like touring a luxury hotel, except I was apparently the only guest. The suite she led me to occupied the entire east wing of the second floor. Bedroom, sitting room, private bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in, and a walk-in closet that was already filled with clothes. I stopped in the doorway of the closet, staring at the rows of dresses, jeans, sweaters, all in what looked like my exact size. How? I turned to find Dominic standing in the bedroom doorway, hands in his pockets, watching me with an unreadable expression. How did you know my size? When did you even have time to do this? I'm efficient when I'm motivated, he said simply. If anything doesn't fit or isn't to your taste, Elena can arrange for alterations or replacements. I wanted to be angry. Should have been angry at this invasion of my privacy, this assumption that he could just buy his way into my life. But standing there, looking at clothes that probably cost more than I made in a year, I felt something more complicated than anger. I felt the weight of obligation settling onto my shoulders like a lead blanket. I can't accept all this, I said quietly. It's too much. It's nothing, he countered. You need clothes. I provided them. That's all. No, I said, turning to face him. That's not all. Every gift comes with strings, Dominic. Every favor creates a debt. I learned that a long time ago. His expression hardened. I'm not your stepfather, Diana. I don't keep score. Everyone keeps score, I said, especially in your world. He was silent for a long moment, studying me with those dark eyes that seemed to see too much. Finally, he nodded. You're right. In my world, everything is a transaction. Every favor has a price. But not this. Not with you. Why? The question burst out of me, all the confusion and fear of the past 24 hours condensing into that single word. Why are you doing this? And don't tell me it's because of my mother. 12 years is a long time to wait to honor a promise. He moved into the room, and I fought the urge to back away. There was something predatory in the way he moved, controlled but dangerous, like a wolf pretending to be a dog. You want the truth? I want to understand. The truth is, he said, stopping a few feet away from me. I've been watching you for years, making sure you were safe, that you had what you needed. The scholarship that paid for your nursing school, that was me. The apartment you're living in, the one with below market rent, the landlord owes me a favor. Your job at St. Michael's, I may have suggested to the director that they had an opening. The room tilted around me. You've been manipulating my life. I've been protecting you, he corrected. From a distance, the way your mother asked. But I've always been there, Diana. Always watching. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it ignited something low in my belly. Something dangerous that I couldn't quite name. That's not protection, I said, my voice shaking. That's obsession. Yes, he agreed simply. It is. The honesty of it stole my breath. You can't just say things like that. Why not? You asked for the truth. He took another step closer. The truth is that I made a promise to a dying woman, and that promise became something more. The truth is that I've watched you grow from a frightened teenager into a strong, compassionate woman. And somewhere along the way, protection became something else entirely. What? I whispered, though part of me already knew the answer. Possession, he said. The need to keep you safe, to give you everything, to make sure no one ever hurts you again. I've tried to fight it, to keep my distance, to let you live your life. But then you showed up at my hospital, beaten and bruised, and I realized I was done staying away. I should have run, should have called for Elena or one of the guards, demanded to be taken back to the city immediately. But my feet remained rooted to the floor. My eyes locked with his. This is insane. Probably, he agreed. But it's honest. I'm not going to lie to you, Diana. I'm not going to pretend this is just about your mother or some noble sense of duty. I want you here. I want you safe. And I want you to choose to stay. Choose? I laughed, the sound bitter. What choice do I have? My stepfather is stalking me. You've infiltrated every aspect of my life. Where exactly am I supposed to go? Anywhere, he said. Say the word, and I'll have you taken anywhere in the world. New identity, new life, enough money to start over. You'd be free of both of us. The offer hung in the air between us, tempting and terrifying. But you wouldn't be safe, he finished. Your stepfather has connections. Not as extensive as mine, but enough. He'd find you eventually, and when he did, I wouldn't be there to stop him. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly unable to support me. So my choices are to stay here in your golden cage, or run and hope I stay ahead of him long enough to build a life. Those aren't your only choices. He crossed the room and knelt in front of me, bringing his face level with mine. You could trust me. Let me handle your stepfather permanently. Let me give you the security and freedom to actually live instead of just survive. In exchange for what? I asked again, because I needed to hear him say it. What do you want from me, Dominic? His hand came up slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he cupped my bruised cheek with a gentleness that seemed at odds with everything I knew about him. I want you to give me a chance, he said quietly. A chance to prove that I can be more than the monster you think I am. A chance to show you that a cage can also be a sanctuary. And if I say no, then I'll respect that, he said. You can stay here as long as you need to feel safe. No expectations, no obligations. When you're ready to leave, I'll make sure you have everything you need to start over. I searched his face for any sign of deception, any hint that he was playing me. But all I saw was raw honesty, and that scared me more than any lie could have. Because lies I understood, lies I could guard against. But this brutal truth, this admission of obsession disguised as protection, I had no defense for that. I need time, I said finally. Time to think, to process all of this. Take all the time you need. He stood, and I felt the absence of his touch like a physical loss. Elena will get you anything you require. Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join me, but there's no pressure. You can eat in your room if you prefer. He was almost to the door when I found my voice again. Dominic? He turned, something hopeful flickering in his eyes. My mother, I said. Tell me about the night she died. The real story, not the sanitized version you told the police. His expression shuddered, walls slamming down behind his eyes. Why? Because if I'm going to trust you, if I'm even going to consider staying here, I need to understand. I need to know what kind of man she thought was worth dying for. He stood silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved back into the room, taking a seat in one of the armchairs by the window. It was a business deal gone wrong, he began, his voice carefully neutral. I was young, arrogant, thought I was untouchable. A rival family wanted to send a message, so they set up an ambush outside your apartment building. They knew I had business in that neighborhood, knew I'd be passing through. I remembered that night with crystalline clarity. I'd been 14, coming home from school, and I'd seen the black cars, the men with guns. My mother had been leaving for her night shift at the diner. She could have gone back inside, could have stayed safe. But she'd seen what was about to happen. Had seen the gunman taking aim at Dominic as he stepped out of his car. She pushed you out of the way, I said. I saw it happen. She did more than that, Dominic said. She threw herself in front of the bullet. No hesitation, no thought for her own safety. Just pure instinct to protect someone she didn't even know. Why you, though? I asked. Out of all the people on that street, why did she choose to save you? He met my eyes, and I saw the weight of guilt he'd been carrying for 12 years. I don't know. Maybe she saw something in me worth saving. Maybe it was just random chance. She never said. By the time I got to her, held her while we waited for the ambulance, she was already fading, his hands clenched into fists. She asked me about you, made me promise to look after you, to make sure you stayed away from my world, from the violence and darkness. She said you were meant for better things, that you were going to be a nurse, going to help people. She made me swear I'd let you have that life. But you didn't stay away, I said. Not completely. I tried, he said. God knows I tried, but I couldn't just abandon you. Your stepfather moved in 6 months after your mother died, and I saw what he was doing. The drinking, the violence. I wanted to kill him. Should have killed him. But I remembered your mother's words about staying away from you, about letting you be normal. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. So, I helped from a distance, made sure you had opportunities, resources, kept my people watching to make sure he never crossed certain lines. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough because every time I saw you through my reports, every time I heard about another bruise or another bill you were struggling to pay, I wanted to break my promise and bring you here where you'd be safe. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid, he admitted, the words seemingly torn from him. Afraid that if I got too close, I'd become just another cage for you to escape. Afraid that you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now, like I'm some kind of monster. I stood and walked to where he stood by the window. Outside, the gardens were bathed in golden afternoon light, beautiful and peaceful. A lie of safety in a dangerous world. Are you? I asked. A monster? He turned to face me, and the rawness in his expression made my chest ache. I've done monstrous things, Diana. I've hurt people, killed people, built an empire on fear and blood. But with you? His hand came up again, hovering near my face but not quite touching. With you, I want to be better. Your mother saw something in me worth saving. Maybe you could too. The moment stretched between us, heavy with possibility and danger. I thought about my mother, about the woman who'd worked 2 jobs to give me a better life, who'd thrown herself in front of a bullet for a stranger. What would she think of this? Of me, standing in a mansion with the man she'd died to save, feeling something that was definitely not fear, definitely not simple gratitude. I'll stay, I said finally. For now. But I need rules. Boundaries. Anything, he said immediately. First, I want to continue working at the hospital. I won't be locked up here like some kind of prisoner. He frowned but nodded. With security. With discreet security, I countered. No obvious guards following me around the hospital. Agreed. What else? I want access to information about my stepfather. What you're doing, how you're handling him. No keeping me in the dark. Done. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. I'll have my security chief brief you daily. And finally, I said, my heart pounding, I want honesty. Complete honesty. If you're going to make decisions that affect my life, I want to know about them first. Something that looked like respect flickered in his eyes. That goes both ways. If you're planning to leave, if you're unhappy with any arrangement, I want to know immediately. Fair enough. I extended my hand. Do we have a deal? He looked at my outstretched hand, then took it in his. His palm was warm, calloused, strong. The touch sent electricity up my arm, and from the way his eyes darkened, he felt it too. We have a deal, he said. As he raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt like a brand, I wondered if I'd just negotiated my freedom, or signed it away completely. Only time would tell if this sanctuary Dominic promised would become my salvation or my prison. The first 3 days in Dominic's house passed in a strange blur of luxury and tension. I fell into a routine of sorts, waking in silk sheets that felt like sin against my skin, eating meals prepared by a private chef who seemed to know my preferences before I did, and spending my evenings in the library, losing myself in books to avoid thinking about the man who owned everything around me. True to his word, Dominic gave me space. I saw him at dinner, brief encounters where we made polite conversation about my day at the hospital, the weather, anything but the attraction that crackled between us like a live wire. His security chief, a stern man named Marcus, briefed me each morning about my stepfather. He'd been spotted twice near the hospital, but had been turned away before he could enter. No direct contact, no threats. For the first time in years, I felt almost safe. Almost. On the fourth morning, Marcus's expression was different when he came to give me the daily briefing. Tighter, more concerned. "Miss Martinez, we have a situation." I set down my coffee cup, my stomach clenching. "What kind of situation?" "Your stepfather made contact with some dangerous people. Russians. They're offering him money to provide information about your location." The room seemed to tilt. "Why would Russians care about me?" "They don't." Dominic's voice came from the doorway. He was dressed for the day in a black suit that made him look every inch the dangerous man he was. "They care about me. Your leverage." I stood, anger flaring hot in my chest. "Leverage for what?" "There's a territory dispute," he said, moving into the room with that predatory grace I'd come to recognize. "The Morozov family thinks they can expand into my operations. Using you to get to me would give them significant advantage." "So I'm bait now?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Just a pawn in your territorial games." "You're not a pawn," he said, his voice hard. "You're under my protection, which makes you untouchable. But the Morozovs don't play by the same rules I do. They won't hesitate to hurt you if they think it'll hurt me." Marcus cleared his throat. "Sir, we've intercepted communications suggesting they're planning to move within the next 48 hours. We need to relocate Miss Martinez to the safe house upstate." "No," Dominic and I said simultaneously. We looked at each other, and something passed between us, an understanding that surprised us both. "I won't run," I said. "I spent 12 years running from my stepfather. I'm not going to run from his new friends, too." "Diana, this isn't about pride," Dominic said, his patience clearly strained. "The Morozovs are dangerous. They make your stepfather look like an amateur." "Then deal with them," I said. "Isn't that what you do? Deal with threats?" His jaw clenched. "I am dealing with them, but that takes time, planning. In the meantime, I need you somewhere I know you're absolutely safe." "I'm safe here," I insisted. "You said yourself this place is a fortress." "It is. But it's also where they expect you to be." He moved closer, and I saw the fear lurking behind his controlled expression. "Fear for me. Please, Diana, just for a few days until I can neutralize this threat." The please undid me. In all our interactions, Dominic had been commanding, authoritative, a man used to being obeyed. But now he was asking, almost begging, and I saw the cost of it in every line of his body. "What about my job?" I asked, my resistance crumbling. "I can't just disappear from the hospital." "I've already made arrangements," he said. "Personal emergency leave. Paid, of course. Elena is packing your things as we speak. We leave in an hour." Of course he'd already decided. Some small, stubborn part of me wanted to refuse just to prove I could, but the fear in his eyes stopped me. This wasn't about control or possession. This was about keeping me alive. "Fine," I said, "but you're coming with me. I'm not going to some remote location with just guards for company." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or satisfaction. I had planned to stay here, to handle the situation from... "Those are my terms," I interrupted. "You want me to hide? You hide with me. Otherwise, I'm staying right here." Marcus made a strangled sound that might have been a laugh. Dominic shot him a look before turning back to me. "You're negotiating." "I learned from the best," I said, holding his gaze. "Do we have a deal?" A slow smile spread across his face, predatory and pleased. "We have a deal." The safe house turned out to be a cabin in the Adirondacks, though calling it a cabin was like calling the mansion a house. It was a sprawling lodge of wood and stone, perched on a mountainside with views that went on forever. Remote, beautiful, and so isolated that I couldn't see another building in any direction. "You have a type," I said as we pulled up to the entrance. "Big, expensive, in the middle of nowhere." "I have trust issues," he corrected, helping me out of the SUV. His hand lingered on my elbow, warm through the thin fabric of my jacket. "And a need for security." The interior was all exposed beams and floor-to-ceiling windows, furnished with leather and wood, that managed to be both rustic and luxurious. A fire was already burning in the massive stone fireplace, and I realized with a start that we were alone. No Elena. No guards visible anywhere. "Where is everyone?" I asked, suddenly very aware of how isolated we were. "Marcus and his team are in the security house down the mountain," Dominic said, shrugging out of his jacket. "Close enough to respond if needed, far enough to give us privacy." "Us." The word hung in the air between us, loaded with implication. He turned to face me, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. "You demanded I come with you. Here I am." I didn't mean... I stopped, not sure what I'd meant. I just didn't want to be alone with strangers. "And now you're alone with me." He moved closer, and I fought the urge to back away. Is that better or worse? My heart hammered against my ribs. "I don't know yet." "Honest," he murmured. "I like that about you, Diana. You don't play games." "I don't know how," I admitted. "I've spent my whole life trying to survive. I never learned the rules of whatever this is." "This," he said, gesturing between us, "doesn't have rules. That's what makes it dangerous." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, saw an unknown number, and felt ice flood my veins. "It's him," I said. "My stepfather." Dominic's expression darkened. "Answer it." "Put it on speaker." With trembling fingers, I accepted the call. "Hello?" "Diana, baby, I've been so worried about you." My stepfather's voice, slurred with alcohol and false concern, made my skin crawl. "You disappeared. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," I said, my voice flat. "No thanks to you." "Now, that's not fair," he whined. "I made a mistake. I was drunk. It won't happen again. Just come home and we can talk about this." "I'm not coming home," I said. "Ever. Stay away from me." His voice changed, hardening. "You think you're safe with him? With Dominic Cross? You have no idea what kind of man he is, what he's capable of." "I know exactly what he's capable of," I said, looking at Dominic. "And right now, that's the only thing keeping you alive." "Tough talk for a little girl playing house with a killer," my stepfather spat. "But here's the thing, Diana. Your new boyfriend has enemies, and they're very interested in meeting you, very interested in finding out what he values enough to hide away." My blood ran cold. "What did you do?" "What I had to," he said. "They offered me money, protection. All I had to do was tell them where to find you. But I'm feeling generous. You have 12 hours to come meet me. Alone. Or I tell them where you are." "Don't," Dominic said, his voice deadly calm. "She's not going anywhere near you." My stepfather laughed, the sound ugly and triumphant. "Cross. I should have known you'd be listening. Here's how this is going to work. Diana meets me at the old pier on the Hudson, the one near where her mother died. Alone. If I see any of your people, if I even suspect you're watching, I make one phone call, and the Russians will have her location within minutes." "You're signing your own death warrant," Dominic said. "Maybe," my stepfather agreed, "but I'll die rich. Your choice, Cross. Let Diana come talk to her old man, or spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when the Morozovs will come for her. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. He's bluffing. He has to be bluffing. He's desperate, Dominic said, already pulling out his own phone. And desperate men are dangerous. Marcus, we have a problem. As Dominic spoke rapidly to his security chief, I moved to the window, looking out at the mountains. 12 hours. My stepfather had given us 12 hours to figure out how to handle this, to find a way to protect me from both him and the Russians he'd allied himself with. We need to get ahead of this. Marcus's voice came through the speaker. If he really does know your location, we need to move Miss Martinez immediately. No, I said, turning from the window. We're not running anymore. Both men stared at me. Diana, Dominic began, but I cut him off. He wants me to meet him at the pier, so I'll meet him. Absolutely not, Dominic said, his voice hard. That's exactly what he wants. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, I agreed. But it's also an opportunity. He's arrogant, drunk, thinks he's won. That makes him sloppy. I moved to where Dominic stood, looking up at him with more confidence than I felt. You said you wanted to deal with this threat. Here's your chance. Use me as bait. No. The word was absolute. Final. I won't risk you. You won't have a choice if he really does know where we are, I pointed out. Better to control the situation than wait for the Russians to show up here. I could see him warring with himself, logic fighting against the need to keep me safe. Finally, he turned to the phone. Marcus, I need everything we have on the old pier. Exits, sightlines, places to position our people. Sir, Marcus started, but Dominic cut him off. We do this Diana's way, but we do it smart, with backup. With every possible advantage. I want our best people, full surveillance, and extraction plans for every contingency. He ended the call and turned to me, his expression fierce. If we do this, you follow my lead completely. No arguments, no improvising. Understood? Understood, I said, though my hands were shaking. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to cup my face. The touch was possessive, desperate, and despite everything, I leaned into it. If anything happens to you, he said, his voice rough, if he so much as touches you, he won't, I said, covering his hands with mine. You won't let him. No, he agreed, his forehead coming to rest against mine. I won't. We stood like that for a long moment, breathing the same air, the danger ahead of us making the present moment feel stolen, precious. When he finally pulled back, his eyes had changed. The control was back, the careful distance he always maintained. But I'd seen beneath it now, seen the raw emotion he kept locked away. And I realized with sudden, terrifying clarity that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about my mother's promise or simple protection. This had become something more, something dangerous that neither of us could control. 12 hours, Dominic said, his voice steady despite the storm I'd seen in his eyes. We have 12 hours to prepare. Let's not waste them. As he moved away to make more calls, to coordinate with his people, and plan for every possible outcome, I touched my fingers to my face where his hands had been. The warmth of him lingered on my skin like a promise, or a warning. In 12 hours, everything would change. My stepfather would be dealt with one way or another. The Russians would make their move or be neutralized. And I would have to decide what I really wanted from this complicated, dangerous man who'd turned my life upside down. I demanded freedom, boundaries, control over my own life. But standing in his safe house, preparing to walk into danger with him at my side, I realized that sometimes the strongest cage was the one you chose for yourself. The drive back to the city felt like descending into hell. Every mile that brought us closer to the pier, closer to the confrontation with my stepfather, made the weight in my chest grow heavier. Dominic sat beside me in the back of the armored SUV, his hand resting on his thigh close enough to mine that I could feel the heat radiating from him, but not quite touching. The distance felt deliberate, careful, as if he was maintaining control through sheer force of will. "Last chance to change your mind," he said, his voice low enough that the driver couldn't hear. "We can turn around right now. Marcus has people in place. They can handle this without you." I shook my head, watching the city lights blur past the tinted windows. "He won't show if I'm not there. You know that." "I know," he admitted. "Doesn't mean I have to like it." His phone buzzed, and he answered immediately. "Talk to me, Marcus." I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I watched Dominic's face as he listened, saw the muscle in his jaw clench and release. "Understood. We're 10 minutes out. Make sure everyone knows the priority is getting Diana clear if things go wrong." "If things go wrong, the priority is stopping the Russians," I interjected. "I'm the bait, remember? I need to be convincing." He ended the call and turned to me, his eyes hard. "The priority is always keeping you safe. Everything else is secondary. Even if it means letting my stepfather go? Letting the Morozovs think they have leverage over you?" I shook my head. "That's not strategic. That's emotional." "Yes," he said simply. "It is. With you, everything is emotional. That's what makes this so dangerous." Before I could respond, the SUV slowed, pulling into an alley 3 blocks from the pier. Marcus was waiting, along with 2 other men I recognized as part of Dominic's security team. They were dressed in dark clothes, practically invisible in the shadows, and the bulges under their jackets told me they were heavily armed. "Positions?" Dominic asked as he helped me out of the vehicle. 6 men on the rooftops with clear sight lines to the pier, Marcus reported. 4 more in civilian vehicles at each approach, 2 in the water posing as fishermen. We have eyes on everything. "The Russians?" "No sign yet. Either they're being very careful, or your stepfather was bluffing about contacting them." "He wasn't bluffing," I said with certainty. "He's desperate enough to do anything." Dominic pulled out a small device from his pocket, something that looked like a high-tech button. "This is a panic trigger," he said, pressing it into my palm. "If anything feels wrong, if he tries anything, you press this, and my people move in immediately." "What about the wire?" I gestured to the small microphone that had been placed under my jacket collar during our preparation at the cabin. "That's so we can hear everything. The panic button is for when hearing isn't enough." His hand closed around mine, pressing the device firmly into my palm. "Promise me you'll use it if you need to." "I promise," I said, though we both knew I was lying. If I used the panic button too soon, my stepfather might run, or the Russians might disappear, and this nightmare would just start all over again. The walk to the pier felt endless. My footsteps echoed on the weathered boards, each step taking me closer to a confrontation I'd been avoiding for 12 years. The Hudson River stretched out before me, dark and vast, reflecting the lights of the city like scattered diamonds. This place, this exact spot, was where my mother had worked her last shift at the diner that used to stand here. Where she'd walked home countless nights, tired and worn, but always smiling when she saw me waiting up for her. Where she died saving a stranger who'd turned my life into something I no longer recognized. "I'm here," I called out, my voice carrying across the empty pier. "Alone, just like you wanted." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then I heard footsteps, unsteady and shuffling, and my stepfather emerged from behind a shipping container at the far end of the pier. He looked worse than I remembered, his face bloated and red, his clothes wrinkled and stained. But his eyes, those eyes held the same mean cunning that had terrorized my childhood. "There's my girl," he said, his words slurring together. Thought you were too good for your old man now. Thought you could just run off with your rich boyfriend and forget where you came from. I never forgot where I came from, I said, keeping my distance. I just wanted to be somewhere else. He laughed, the sound ugly and wet. Well, now you're back. Back where you belong. Back where I can keep an eye on you. Why? The question burst out of me, all the confusion and anger of 12 years condensing into that single word. Why couldn't you just let me go? Why do you keep coming after me? Because you're mine, he said, his expression twisting into something possessive and disturbing. Your mother took you away from me, filled your head with ideas about leaving, about being better. But she's gone now, and you're all I have left. I was never yours, I said. You married my mother. That doesn't make me your property. Doesn't it? He took a step forward, and I fought the urge to back away. I supported you, fed you, put a roof over your head. You owe me. I owe you nothing, I said, my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. You beat my mother. You drank away every cent we had. You made her life hell. And when she died, you made mine hell too. I gave you discipline, he snarled. Structure. You were a wild thing, needed to be taught respect. You taught me fear, I corrected, and how to survive. But I'm done surviving. I'm done letting you control my life. His face darkened, and I saw his hand move to his jacket pocket. You think you're strong now? Think your boyfriend makes you untouchable? Let me tell you something about Dominic Cross. He's a killer, Diana. A monster. He's used people, destroyed them. And one day, he'll destroy you too. Maybe, I said. But at least he'll do it honestly. At least he doesn't pretend to care while he's breaking me. The words seemed to enrage him. He lunged forward, moving faster than I expected for someone so drunk, and his hand closed around my wrist with bruising force. You ungrateful little... The panic button was in my other hand. All I had to do was press it, and this would be over. But something held me back. Some need to finish this myself, to prove that I wasn't the frightened girl he'd terrorized. Let go of me, I said, my voice cold. Or what? You'll run to your boyfriend? You'll cry? He yanked me closer, his breath hot and rancid on my face. You're nothing, Diana. You've always been nothing, just like your mother. The mention of my mother, said with such contempt, broke something inside me. My knee came up hard and fast, connecting with his groin just like it had the night he'd attacked me outside my apartment. He gasped and released me, stumbling backward, and I pressed the panic button. But I was too late to notice the men emerging from the shadows behind the shipping containers. 3 of them, large and professional, moving with the kind of coordination that spoke of military training. Russians. My stepfather hadn't been bluffing after all. Diana, run! Dominic's voice came through an invisible speaker somewhere nearby, urgent and commanding. But there was nowhere to run. The men had positioned themselves to block all the exits, and they were moving toward me with predatory focus. My stepfather had straightened, a sick smile spreading across his face despite the pain. Told you I had friends? Told you I had options. You told us she'd be alone, one of the Russians said, his accent thick. This feels like a trap. She is alone, my stepfather insisted. Cross wouldn't risk his people. He's too busy trying to protect his territory. He's wrong, I said, finding my voice. You're all wrong. Dominic doesn't protect his territory. He protects what's his. The Russian who'd spoken moved closer, studying me with cold eyes. And you think you're his? I know I am, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Which means you have about 30 seconds before this pier is swarmed with his people. Your choice. Leave now, or deal with the consequences. He laughed, but there was uncertainty in his eyes. Bold words for someone who has no leverage. Don't I? I gestured to the device in my hand. This is already activated. His people know exactly where I am, exactly what's happening. The only question is whether you're fast enough to get away before they arrive. As if on cue, I heard the sound of vehicles approaching, tires squealing on asphalt. The Russians heard it too, exchanged glances, and I saw the moment they decided to cut their losses. They melted back into the shadows as quickly as they'd appeared, disappearing between shipping containers and into the maze of the industrial waterfront. My stepfather tried to follow them, but his coordination was shot. His movements clumsy. He'd barely made it 3 steps before dark figures emerged from every direction. Dominic's security team moving in with practiced efficiency. They surrounded him, weapons drawn, and he fell to his knees with a whimper that was almost pathetic. Then Dominic was there, moving past his people like a force of nature. His eyes locked on me with such intensity that everything else faded away. He didn't speak, didn't ask if I was okay. He simply pulled me into his arms, his hand cradling the back of my head, his body shaking with what might have been fear or fury or both. You waited too long, he said against my hair, his voice rough. You should have pressed the button the moment he touched you. I wanted to do it myself, I admitted. I needed to prove I could stand up to him. You have nothing to prove, he said, pulling back enough to look at me. Not to him, not to me. You're the strongest person I know, Diana. The fact that you survived him, that you built a life despite him, that proves everything. Behind us, my stepfather was being hauled to his feet by Marcus and another guard. He was crying now, begging, promising he'd disappear if they just let him go. The transformation from threatening to pathetic would have been satisfying if it wasn't so disturbing. What will you do with him? I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. Dominic's expression went cold, distant. The face of a man who'd made countless difficult decisions and never lost sleep over them. What would you like me to do with him? The question hung between us, heavy with implication. He was giving me the choice, the power. One word from me, and my stepfather would disappear, would stop being a problem permanently. It would be so easy, so simple. Justice for 12 years of fear and pain. But as I looked at the broken man sobbing between Dominic's guards, I realized I didn't want that kind of justice. I didn't want to carry the weight of his death. Didn't want to become the kind of person who could order someone killed, even someone who deserved it. I want him gone, I said finally. Out of the city, out of my life. I want him so far away that he can't find his way back even if he tries. But I don't want him dead. Something that looked like relief flickered across Dominic's face. That can be arranged. Marcus, take him to the safe house. I'll decide what to do with him later. As they dragged my stepfather away, still pleading and crying, I felt something inside me break and heal simultaneously. The fear that had lived in my chest for 12 years, the constant awareness of him lurking in the shadows of my life, began to fade. He was just a man. Weak, pathetic, powerless, without the fear he'd cultivated in me. The Russians, I said, suddenly remembering. They got away. They won't get far, Dominic assured me. My people are tracking them. They'll be dealt with by morning. Dealt with, I repeated. That's a polite way of saying killed, isn't it? Would you prefer I was less polite? He took my hand, threading his fingers through mine. This is my world, Diana. This is what I do. I eliminate threats. I protect what's mine. If that bothers you, it should bother me, I interrupted. It should terrify me. But all I feel is relieved. Is that wrong? No, he said. It's survival. It's understanding that sometimes the only way to be safe is to be ruthless. We walked back to the SUV in silence, his hand never leaving mine. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me shaky and exhausted. Dominic helped me into the back seat, sliding in beside me, and as the vehicle pulled away from the pier, I finally let myself collapse against him. I need to know something, I said quietly. When you look at me, when you touch me, is it really about the promise to my mother? Or is it something else? His arm tightened around me, his lips brushing against my temple. It stopped being about your mother the moment I saw you at the hospital. Maybe before that. Maybe it was never really about her at all. Then what is it about? I tilted my head back to look at him, and the raw hunger in his eyes stole my breath. It's about the fact that I've been watching you for years, telling myself it was duty when it was really obsession. It's about the fact that seeing you hurt makes me want to burn down the world. It's about the fact that I want you in ways I have no right to want you. His hand came up to cut my face, thumb tracing my lower lip. It's about the fact that I'm not a good man, Diana. But with you, I want to be. I should have pulled away. Should have remembered all the reasons this was dangerous, wrong, impossible. But instead, I heard myself whisper, "Then be that man." His control snapped. I felt it in the way his hand tightened on my face, the way his breath caught. And then his lips were on mine, hungry and desperate. And I was kissing him back with equal desperation, months of tension and denial exploding between us. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. It wasn't gentle or sweet. It was consuming, possessive, a claiming that left no room for doubt about what he wanted, what we both wanted. His hand tangled in my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss, and I clutched at his jacket, needing him closer, needing more. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I saw my own shock reflected in his eyes. We'd crossed a line, shattered the careful distance we'd maintained. There was no going back now. "Diana," he said, my name a question and a warning. "I know," I said. "I know what this means. I know what I'm choosing. Do you?" His hand was still in my hair, his forehead resting against mine. "Once you're mine, truly mine, I won't let you go. Can't let you go. You need to understand what you're agreeing to." "A cage that looks like paradise," I said, echoing his words from days ago. "A sanctuary that's also a prison." "Yes," he admitted, "exactly that." I thought about my tiny apartment, my struggles to pay rent, my stepfather's shadow hanging over every moment of peace I tried to claim. I thought about freedom and what it really meant. Was it the absence of walls or the presence of choice? "Then make it a beautiful cage," I said. "Make it worth the loss of freedom." His smile was dark and triumphant. "I'll give you everything," he promised. "Everything you've ever wanted, everything you've ever dreamed of. You'll never want for anything again. Except the ability to leave." "Except that?" he agreed. "But you won't want to leave, Diana. I'll make sure of it." As the SUV carried us through the city, back to his mansion that would now be my home in truth, rather than just temporarily, I realized he was right. The cage had already closed around me. I just hadn't noticed it happening until it was too late. But unlike my stepfather's control, unlike the fear that had ruled my life for so long, this cage came with a promise, protection, security, and something that looked dangerously like love, even if neither of us was ready to name it yet. I'd chosen this, chosen him. And whatever came next, I'd face it with my eyes open, knowing exactly what kind of man I'd given myself to. A monster who wanted to be better. For me. 3 months had passed since the night at the pier, and I'd learned that Dominic Cross kept his promises. Every single one of them. The mansion had transformed from a gilded prison into something that felt dangerously close to home. My clothes now hung permanently in the massive closet. My books lined the library shelves. My favorite tea appeared in the kitchen as if by magic, brewed exactly the way I liked it each morning. Elena knew my schedule better than I did, and the guards who'd once made me nervous now greeted me by name, their faces softening when I passed. I'd returned to work at the hospital, though with conditions. The discreet security Dominic had promised turned out to be a rotating team that blended seamlessly into the hospital staff. I'd spot them occasionally, a maintenance worker who moved with too much precision, a visitor who never actually visited anyone. It should have felt intrusive, but instead it felt safe. My stepfather had been relocated to a remote town in Alaska, given enough money to survive, but with explicit instructions that returning to New York would have fatal consequences. I didn't ask what Dominic had done to ensure his compliance. Some things I'd learned not to question. The Russians had been handled more permanently. I'd read about it in the newspaper, a suspected gang violence incident that left 3 bodies in an abandoned warehouse. Dominic never confirmed his involvement, but the way he'd watched me read the article, gauging my reaction, told me everything I needed to know. I should have been horrified. Should have run from a man capable of such violence. But I'd seen what happened to people who threatened what was his, and some dark part of me felt satisfied knowing that those who'd tried to use me as leverage were gone. What scared me most wasn't Dominic's darkness. It was how comfortable I'd become living in it. We'd fallen into a rhythm, a dance of intimacy and distance that left me constantly off balance. Dinners together where we talked about everything and nothing. His hand finding mine as we watched movies in his private theater. The way he'd appear at the hospital during my breaks, bringing coffee and claiming he was in the neighborhood, as if his presence anywhere was ever coincidental. But he hadn't kissed me again. Not since that night in the SUV when everything had changed. He'd touch me, constantly, his hands on my back, my shoulder, my face. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him, smell his cologne, see the desire burning in his eyes. But he never crossed that final line, never took what I knew he wanted. It was driving me insane. "You're distracted," Linda said, pulling me from my thoughts. We were at the nursing station, updating patient charts, and I'd apparently been staring at the same screen for 5 minutes. "Sorry," I said, forcing myself to focus. "Just tired." She gave me a knowing look. Tired? Or thinking about a certain someone? I'd confided in Linda about my relationship with Dominic, or at least a sanitized version of it. She knew I was living with him, knew there was history between us, but she didn't know the details, didn't know about the promises to my dead mother, the protection that had become possession, the way my life had been carefully orchestrated by a man who made his living in violence and control. "Both," I admitted. "He's complicated." "All men are complicated," she said. "But the good ones are worth it. Is he good, Diana?" The question stopped me. Was Dominic good? By conventional standards, absolutely not. He was a crime boss, a killer, a man who bent the world to his will through fear and force. But with me, he was patient, protective, surprisingly gentle. He'd given me everything I'd asked for and things I hadn't known I wanted. He'd freed me from my stepfather, given me security and peace for the first time in my life. "He's good to me," I said finally. "That's all that matters." Linda studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Just be careful, honey. Men like that, they love hard, but they also control hard. Make sure you don't lose yourself in taking care of him." Her words echoed in my mind long after my shift ended. As Dominic's driver, the same silent man who'd been escorting me for months, drove me back to the mansion, I wondered if it was already too late. Had I lost myself? Or had I simply found a different version of myself? One that was stronger, more secure, capable of accepting love that came wrapped in darkness. Dominic was waiting for me in his study when I arrived home. The word felt natural now, home, even though this would never truly be mine. He looked up from his desk as I entered, and something in his expression made my breath catch. "We need to talk," he said, and those 4 words sent ice through my veins. "That's never good," I said, trying to keep my voice light as I sank into the leather chair across from his desk. "What happened?" "Nothing happened," he said. "That's the problem. 3 months, Diana. You've been here 3 months, and I've been waiting for you to run. Waiting for you to realize what kind of life this is and decide you want out." "I'm not running," I said, confused by the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. "I know," he said. "That's what scares me. You should run. You should want out. But instead you're settling in, making this place your home, looking at me like—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair in uncharacteristic frustration. "Like I'm not a monster." I stood and moved around the desk, perching on the edge in front of him. "You are a monster," I said bluntly. "But you're my monster. That's the difference." His hand came up to grip my thigh, fingers digging in possessively. "You don't understand what you're saying, what you're committing to." "Don't I?" I covered his hand with mine. "I've seen what you do, Dominic. I know the kind of man you are. I know about the bodies, the deals, the violence. I'm not naive. Then why are you still here?" The question was torn from him, raw and desperate. "Why do you look at me like I'm something good when we both know the truth?" "Because you are good," I said. "To me. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe it makes me complicit in everything you do. But I don't care anymore. I'm tired of pretending I want the life I had before. I'm tired of pretending I don't want this. Don't want you." His control, that iron grip he maintained on himself at all times, finally cracked. He stood abruptly, pulling me with him, his hands framing my face with a desperation that stole my breath. "If I take what I want, if I truly make you mine, there's no going back. You understand that? No more separate rooms, no more distance. You'll be mine completely." "I'm already yours," I whispered. "I have been since the night at the pier. Maybe before that. I'm just tired of pretending otherwise." The kiss was inevitable, explosive. His mouth claimed mine with a hunger that had been building for months, and I met it with equal fervor, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. This wasn't the desperate kiss in the SUV, driven by adrenaline and fear. This was a claiming, a promise, the final collapse of all the walls we'd built between us. He lifted me onto the desk, scattering papers, his body pressing between my thighs as the kiss deepened. His hands were everywhere, in my hair, on my back, my waist, as if he couldn't touch enough of me at once. And I wanted more, needed to feel all of him without barriers or hesitation. "Diana," he groaned against my mouth, his forehead pressed to mine as we both fought to breathe. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong." "It is wrong," I agreed, my hands sliding under his shirt, feeling the hard muscle and old scars beneath. "But I don't care. I want wrong. I want you." His control shattered completely. He kissed me again, harder this time, possessive and claiming, and I gave myself over to it completely. To him, to this life I'd chosen, this beautiful cage that had become my sanctuary. Later, much later, we lay tangled together in his massive bed, the one I'd never seen before tonight. The room was masculine and dark, all deep colors and expensive fabrics, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the city lights spread out below us like scattered stars. "I need to tell you something," Dominic said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. "Something I should have told you before tonight." I tensed slightly but didn't pull away. "What?" "Your mother," he said. "The night she died. She didn't just make me promise to protect you. She made me promise something else." "What else could there be?" I turned to look at him, seeing the guilt still lurking in his dark eyes even after all these years. "She asked me not to fall in love with you," he said quietly. "She said you deserve someone better, someone clean, someone who could give you a normal life, a safe life. She made me swear I'd stay away from you romantically, that I'd only watch over you from a distance." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You've been fighting this, fighting us, because of a promise to a dying woman." "Yes," he admitted. "I've been fighting it for 12 years. But I lost, Diana. I lost the moment I saw you at that hospital, beaten and vulnerable, and realized I couldn't keep my distance anymore. I lost when I brought you here and watched you transform my cold house into something that felt like home. I lost when I kissed you that first time and knew I'd never be able to let you go." "She was wrong," I said fiercely. "My mother was wrong. She didn't know you, not really. She didn't know that a monster could love as fiercely as you do, could protect as completely, could make me feel safer than I've ever felt in my life." His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "She wanted better for you than this, than me. She wanted me safe and happy," I corrected. "And I am. For the first time in my life, I'm both. That's what she would have wanted, Dominic. Not some sanitized version of safety, but real safety. The kind that comes from being protected by the most dangerous man in the city." He kissed me then, soft and sweet, so different from the desperate claiming earlier. "I love you," he said against my lips. "I've probably loved you for years, telling myself it was duty, or honor, or guilt. But it's always been love, even when I tried to fight it." "I love you too," I whispered back, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. My monster, my protector, my home. We fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time since my mother died, I didn't dream of violence or fear. I dreamed of a future, complicated and dark, but wholly mine, beside a man who would burn down the world to keep me safe. Morning came too quickly, sunlight streaming through the massive windows, painting everything gold. I woke to find Dominic already awake, watching me with an intensity that should have been unsettling, but instead made me feel cherished. "I have something for you," he said, reaching for the nightstand. He pulled out a small velvet box, and my heart stuttered in my chest. "Dominic!" "It's not what you think," he said quickly, opening the box to reveal not a ring, but a key. Ornate and old-fashioned, made of what looked like platinum. "This is the master key to this house. To all my properties, actually. I want you to have it." I stared at the key, understanding the symbolism. "You're giving me the ability to leave." "I'm giving you the choice to stay," he corrected. "Real choice, not the illusion of it. You can go anywhere, anytime. But I'm hoping, I'm asking, that you'll choose to stay with me. Not because you're trapped, but because you want to be here." I took the key, feeling the weight of it in my palm. Physical proof that the cage had no lock, that I was free to leave whenever I wanted. It should have made me want to run, to test those boundaries, to reclaim the independence I'd fought so hard to achieve. Instead, it made me want to stay. "I choose this," I said, closing my fingers around the key. I choose you. I choose us. Not because I have to, but because this is where I want to be." His smile was radiant, transforming his face from something dark and dangerous to something almost beautiful. "Then marry me," he said. "Not now, not today, but someday when you're ready. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving that a monster can love as deeply as any man." "Yes," I said, the word coming easily, naturally. "Someday, when I'm ready to trade one cage for another." He laughed, pulling me back into his arms. "Always so honest. It's one of the things I love most about you." As we lay there, the morning sun warming our skin, I thought about my mother. About the woman who'd sacrificed everything to give me a better life. Who died saving a stranger because she believed in protecting the innocent. She'd been wrong about Dominic, wrong about what I needed. But she'd been right about one thing. I deserved to be safe. Deserved to be loved. Deserved a life worth living. I just found it in the last place anyone would have expected. In the arms of the man she'd died saving. In a mansion that was equal parts sanctuary and prison. In a love that was as dangerous as it was consuming. The cage had become a throne. The protection had become power. And the girl who'd spent 12 years running had finally found a place to stop. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. And in that choice, in that surrender to something bigger and darker and more complicated than simple freedom, I found something I'd been searching for my entire life. I found home.